अस्सलाम वालेकुम।
हाँ मैम।
वालेकुम सलाम। Again we are online this week.
यस मैम। मैम ऐसी हालत लग रही है।
Let's see next week क्या होता है। हम लोग यूनिवर्सिटी इन कैंपस क्लासेस होती हैं या नहीं।
वैसे हम सब ने तो एचओडी को ईमेल की थी कि आप काइंडली कोशिश ये करें कि आप फिजिकल क्लासेस यूनिवर्सिटी में ही हो, क्योंकि मैम काफ़ी स्टूडेंट्स को बहुत इश्यूज आ रहे हैं ऑनलाइन क्लासेस की वजह से। पर देखिए मैम नेक्स्ट टाइम क्या करते हैं।
एक्चुअली एक दफ़ा वो जब नोटिफिकेशन हो जाता है ना एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन की तरफ से, तो फिर मुश्किल हो जाता है एचओडी के लिए। हम लोगों की तरफ से भी यही था कि मुश्किल होता है ऑनलाइन ना। अब लाइक हम लोग के डेवलपमेंट लाइफ साइकिल्स थे। अच्छा मुझे एक चीज़ बताएं, संडे को आप लोगों का क्या होता है, लाइक स्केड्यूल क्या है आप लोगों का?
मैम संडे को भी आपका लेक्चर है और मैम आपके बाद डॉक्टर सिंदाउद का लेक्चर है, बस 2 लेक्चर्स होते हैं।
अच्छा
उनको
संडे को दोनों स्लॉट्स, और सैटरडे को क्या रूटीन है आपकी?
मैम सैटरडे को 5 to 8 मैम सचिल की क्लास है कॉस्ट एंड फाइनेंस मैनेजमेंट।
दैट मीन्स कि अगर हम सैटरडे को एक लेक्चर करना चाहें तो हम कर सकते हैं।
यस मैम।
बट दैट अच्छा, अब मेरे पास जो स्लॉट्स अवेलेबल है ना, मेरी सैटरडे को 1 to 4 और 5 to 8 एक क्लास होती है, 2 क्लासेस, ठीक है। तो मैं अगर ले भी सकती हूँ सैटरडे को, तो दैट वुड बी 9 to 12 मॉर्निंग, या फ्राइडे 5:30 to 8:30। मेरे पास ये 2 स्लॉट्स अवेलेबल है, क्योंकि हमने ऑलरेडी एक मेकअप क्लास करनी है ना।
यस मैम। मैम कौन सी रहती है हमारी?
बेटा वो जो रबिउल अव्वल वाली एक हमारी क्लास नहीं रही थी, संडे ऑफ हो गया था
ठीक हो
12
गया।
रबिउल अव्वल को। तो
मैम क्या करेंगे सैटरडे को अरेंज करके मैम फ्राइडे को ये कि मैम हमारी क्लास में लाइक मैम ज्यादातर जो जॉब ही करते हैं, तो मैम फ्राइडे को उनका वो जॉब टाइमिंग्स का इशू आ जाएगा, तो मैम सैटरडे को हम अरेंज कर लेंगे।
सैटरडे को लेकिन बच्चे फिर सुबह 9 बजे करनी पड़ेगी, क्योंकि 1 बजे वाले स्लॉट में मेरी ऑलरेडी क्लास होती है।
ओके मैम ओके। मैम हमारी कमिंग मैम लाइक अगर कमिंग सैटरडे को यूनिवर्सिटी है, तो 1 बजे वाले स्लॉट पे मैम हमारी मैम सज्जल की अरेंज लेक्चर है, जो क्योंकि मैम वो कॉस्ट का लेक्चर था, तो वो काफ़ी इश्यूज़ आ रहे थे, तो मैम ने कहा था कि आपका चलिए मैं फिज़िकल ले लूँ। और मैम कल टीम्स भी हैंग हो रही थी बहुत, कल टीम्स पे लेक्चर नहीं हो सकता हमारा। तो मैम अगर मैं स्टूडेंट से बात कर लेता हूँ, तो मैम इस वीकेंड या अगर नेक्स्ट वीकेंड जो है ना, हम लोग जो है वो कर लेंगे। सैटरडे को मैम 9 to 12।
अच्छा देखो, अगर कमिंग वीकेंड के ऊपर आप लोग 1 to 4 आ रहे हो ना,
यस मैम।
ठीक है, तो फिर हम लोग 9 to 12 भी रख लेते हैं। उसकी वजह ये है कि आप लोग ना एक दिन में सीक्वेंस में पूरे दिन में आपकी सारी क्लासेस पूरी हो जाएंगी। अदरवाइज जो है ना, फिर आपको कि उससे ये वीक भी आप पाओगे, उससे अगले वीक भी, और फिर मेरी क्लास के लिए ना आपको मतलब बीच में जो 1:12 के बाद से लेकर और 5 बजे तक आप लोग क्या करोगे, और खासतौर पे वो लोग जो दूर से आ रहे हैं।
बिल्कुल मैम, नहीं मैम आपकी बात बिल्कुल ठीक है मैम, यूँ कर लेंगे। मैम बस मैं आपको कन्फर्म कर दूँगा मैम सज्जल से बात करके कि मैम उन्होंने लेक्चर अरेंज हो गया, क्योंकि वो कहते हैं कि मैं आपको पहले इन्फॉर्म कर दूँगी। तो
ठीक
मैम
है,
अगर मैम 1 to 4 हो गए, तो हम इंशाल्लाह मैम 9 to 12 आपके साथ भी मैम हो जाएगा लेक्चर एक।
हाँ ये आप कर लीजिएगा, ठीक है ना, ताकि उसको हम कर लें। मैं एक मेकअप जो हमारा है उसको भी कंप्लीट कर लें, और उसमें ये है कि कुछ चीजें जो हमारी फिर रह जाएंगी उसको हम कवर करेंगे।
तो मैम इसी तरह से कोऑर्डिनेट कर लूँगा मैं।
ठीक हो गया। अच्छा वी हैव 13 स्टूडेंट्स इन द क्लास।
बाकी जॉइन करें मैम, बस तो मैम मैंने कहा 9:30 तक सब जॉइन कर लो मैम, बस वो आ रहे हैं।
ठीक हो गया। आज हमने वही डेवलपमेंट लाइफ साइकिल्स ही कंप्लीट करने, क्योंकि जब तक आपको ये समझ नहीं आएंगे हम लोग आगे नहीं जा पाएंगे, नेक्स्ट लेक्चर नहीं आपकी उसकी अंडरस्टैंडिंग ही नहीं होगी। और ये इसका क्या चल रहा है, लॉन्ग मार्च वगैरह का मैं सुन रही थी, पता नहीं कल बच्चे बता रहे थे कि कुछ।
मैम मैम नेक्स्ट वीकेंड पे मैम लाइक फ्राइडे को मैम, थर्सडे फ्राइडे को डेट अनाउंस हो जानी है, कमिंग थर्सडे फ्राइडे। फिर देखिए,
ओ,
क्योंकि अगर वो डेट अनाउंस होगी तो फिर मैम नेक्स्ट वीक सही बात है मैम, फिर तमाम रोड्स वगैरह बंद कर दी जाएंगी।
यही इशू है ना। अच्छा, आप
वैसे
लोग
मैम,
फ्राइडे 6 बजे तक भी नहीं आ सकते?
बोलिए मैम, आपकी बात समझ नहीं आई।
अगर आप फ्राइडे को 6 o'clock तक भी सब लोग नहीं पहुंच सकते?
मैम मैं क्लास से बात करके आपको बताता हूँ मैम, कोई इशू नहीं।
अगर
मैम
इसको भी देख लो, पता है क्या, बिकॉज अगर ये लॉन्ग मार्च का भी है ना, और लेट सपोज वो थर्सडे या फ्राइडे को अनाउंस करते हैं, तो दैट मीन्स वो एक आध दिन का बीच में क्वेश्चन डेट देंगे ना।
यस मैम, बिल्कुल ऐसे ही है।
ठीक हो गया, तो ये ना हो कि फिर हम लोग वेट करें सैटरडे का, तो हम लोग फिर हमें ऑनलाइन क्लास लेनी पड़े। तो अगर एक हमारी बीच में फिजिकल क्लास हो जाती है ना, तो वो काफी उसमें हमें ना वो हो जाएगा, एंड 2 hours आर गुड एनफ। अगर आप लोग 6 o'clock तक विल, ऑफिशियल टाइम इज 5:30, विल बिगिन एट 5:30 जो आ सके। बट अदरवाइज इस आप लोग 6 बजे तक आते जाए, और हम लोग मीन बीच में जो बाकी चीजें ना वो कवर करते रहेंगे।
ओके मैम। मैम इस स्टूडेंट से बात कर लेता हूँ, आप मुझे कन्वे कर।
दोनों चीजें जहन में आप रखिए ना, और फिर उसके अकॉर्डिंगली आप डिस्कस कर ले, थर्सडे भी और सॉरी फ्राइडे भी और सैटरडे भी।
ओके मैम, ओके मैं आपको कन्वे कर
एक एक सेशन बीच में होना बहुत जरूरी है फिजिकल, ये ना हो कि हम लोग वेट करें और फिर ये ऑनलाइन हो जाए, तो बहुत इट इज गोइंग टू बी बिग ट्रबल फॉर अस टू।
यस मैम, स्टूडेंट्स को काफी ना ये कहा है कि ऑनलाइन क्लासेस ना ही हो, उससे बेहतर हम फिजिकल क्लासेस लें, क्योंकि मैम काफी चीजें स्टूडेंट्स को समझ मैम, कॉस्ट मैनेजमेंट की क्लास है, उसमें अभी तो मैम सारा वो प्रैक्टिकल वो आपका न्यूमेरिकल पोर्शन है सारा हर चीज, तो मैम वो
हम्म,
इसके ऊपर समझ जाती है ऑनलाइन, आप जितना मर्जी कर लें। तो स्टूडेंट्स पहले बहुत सफर कर रहे हैं मैम ऑनलाइन क्लासेस की वजह से।
आई एग्री बिकॉज लास्ट वीक मैं भी थोड़ा ये था कि चलो इस नेक्स्ट वीक विल बी मीटिंग इन यूनिवर्सिटी, और उससे ये है कि है जो लाइफ साइकिल्स है ना, उस पे क्लैरिटी आपकी अच्छी आ जाएगी, एंड वील डू सर्टेन एक्टिविटीज। बट अगेन अनफॉर्चुनेटली, मतलब ये वो फैक्टर्स हैं जो कि एक्सटर्नली आके हम लोग को इन्फ्लुएंस कर रहे होते हैं।
यस मैम, बट मैम इस वीकेंड पे को क्लासेस फिजिकल कर देनी चाहिए थी मैम, क्योंकि लाइक थर्सडे को मैम रात को ऐलान हो गया था कि तमाम रोड्स खोल दी जाएं, तो मैम फ्राइडे सैटरडे संडे मैम तीनों दिन यूनिवर्सिटी को ऑनलाइन करना मैम।
नहीं नहीं, फ्राइडे फ्राइडे को अनाउंस हुआ था ना ये, एक्चुअली फ्राइडे को वर्डिक्ट आया था, इस कलेक्शन कमीशन ने दिया था। उसके बाद यूनिवर्सिटी वाज ओपन, आफ्टरनून में क्लोज की गई है जिस वक्त ये हाईवे के ऊपर इश्यूज आए हैं।
लेकिन मैम पर ये थी कि सैटरडे संडे क्लासेस इजी हो सकती थी।
हाँ, हो सकती थी, बट अगेन वही असल में बस अब क्या कर सकते हैं। चलो, अगर इफ नॉट सैटरडे संडे को सब लोग इजीली मैनेज कर सकते थे, बिकॉज रोड्स आर ओपन, अभी कोई इशू नहीं है।
बिल्कुल
लेकिन
मैम।
बेटे चले जैसे है, बस अब मैनेज तो करना है उसमें हमने।
यस मैम।
दिस इज हाउ इट इज। ओके, आई थिंक अब हम लोग बिगिन करते हैं, वी हैव इनफ स्टूडेंट्स इन द क्लास, 20
यस मैम।
students, and it's a good number. Okay. Okay. So last week we were discussing development approaches. We actually began by discussing development cadence and life cycles and development approaches. Cadence क्या था? Cadence is basically rhythm of activities, that how do we conduct, How do we conduct? How will be conducting activities when we are working on our projects? Rhythm of activities comes with another thing, and that is how we are going to develop our project. So the mechanism that we'll follow to develop our project will actually guide the rhythm of the activities. Uh, so there were three main rhythm of activities that are actually explained in your PMBOK: single delivery, multiple delivery, and periodic delivery. These are the three types of delivery that project managers follow. But there is another one, and it is continuous delivery. But continuous delivery is only specifically for those projects that are operating online, and especially when such projects require some human resource, some resources sitting in the back office and managing it, right? They follow continuous delivery. Then what about those projects? Why? Because IT has, boomed and there is so much development that there are certain projects that are actually happening online and there is no resource that is working behind it. Such products falls under the cadence of continuous deployment. So in total, there are five: multiple single delivery, multiple delivery, periodic delivery, continuous delivery, and development, sorry, continuous deployment. So there were five, development rhythm of activities, cadence activities. After cadence, we were looking at the development approaches, and I told you that there are in total actually five, but they are grouped into two: predictive and adaptive. Predictive life cycle uh, is a traditional life cycle. It is also known as a waterfall life cycle. What we do in predictive life cycle is we plan ahead. We plan ahead everything, right? That how we are going to procure our raw material, how we are going to when we are going to hire some particular resource. We we write we actually write everything in our plan, and we then just go with that plan. We do not make any changes into it, and that was one of the biggest drawback of predictive life cycle, that whenever there is any change required, the project managers were not able to do that. This development approach actually allows the project team to reduce the level of risk in the very early period of time, and to conduct so much of planning upfront. Uh, that actually For that, majority of the project follow the plans that were developed near the start of the project, right? And such, the projects that are following predictive approach actually use the templates, use the methods from the previous reports, okay, have from which reports that were produced by these similar projects. We discussed this quite in detail. The second development approach is adaptive. Adaptive is more close to agile development. Okay. Now, what is adaptive? First, let's understand it. I know this will be a bit difficult for you online इस चीज को, but please try that today you actually grasp the concepts. Why? Because otherwise बहुत मुश्किल हो जाएगा next lecture पे move करना. Okay, now when do we use adaptive approach? Adaptive approach is usually useful when there is so much volatility in your project, when there are so much changes into your project. Then we actually go for the adaptive approaches. When there is so many risk, when there is so many volatility, and when it is expected that there will be so many changes, many changes throughout the project, such projects cannot follow predictive development approach. Then for those projects, adaptive approach was developed. uh, we develop a very clear vision at the beginning of the project, right? For example, we collect the requirements, right? We actually collect the other details that are linked with those requirements. We write the change plan, that if any change is required, what is going to be mechanism of it. We actually write the user feedback, ठीक है. हम we uh, look at the environment, and we try to look for the unexpected events happening in the environment due to the environmental factor, right? So in these cases, we go for the adaptive development approach. Now, adaptive development approach is further, broken down into uh, three parts: iterative, incremental, and your agile. Right? Iterative, incremental, and your agile. So now we need to understand that what these three are. Iterative क्या होती है, incremental क्या है, and what do we mean when by say कि we are working in a agile. Now I'll move to the next slide. ठीक है, we were doing this. We completed this Mona Lisa one. This is a predictive life cycle. We came here iterative, and I told you that iterative life cycle is usually used for those projects that are especially IT project, because IT or software, in the software engineering, they are usually follow the iterative models. Why? Because they have to run the complete process, especially when they are actually developing some software. So, iterative model is that we reiterate the whole process. We keep on the iteration going until unless our final product is developed. अच्छा, इसकी एक और easy example ये भी है कि let's suppose, sorry, let me take the whiteboard. मैं एक और आज एग्जाम्पल से आपको इसको समझाने की कोशिश कर रही हूँ कि चीजें जो हैं थोड़ा ज्यादा क्लियर हो जाए. Now, can you see the whiteboard?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me just see. But I cannot see. Okay. Okay. Let's suppose this is a uh, pot, and we have to fill this pot, right? We have to fill this pot. Now, if we are following predictive life cycle, what we will do is we'll decide that how we are going to fill this pot, whether with concrete. We can put sand into it to fill it. We can use stones to fill this pot. So what we'll do is we will prepare a plan, and this plan will actually contain all the information regarding, regarding the how we are going to fill this plan. We'll see that what did our actually stakeholders said. Our stakeholders said that I just need to fill this plan, and there should be, the surface of this hole should be very, of pot should be very smooth. So we who the project manager actually sat down and look into the different options. The first one is that fill it with sand. Second one is use use stones to fill it, right? Now, project manager and stone size of 2 into 4. Project manager has clearly identified that what will be the size of these stones that will be used, and the rest, the empty portion will they'll use sand to fill it. Project manager, what project manager will do is, project manager will actually give this plan to the project team. Now what project team will do, project team will just follow the plan. They'll actually put all the 2 by 4 size stones here. They'll fill it by it, right, as per the plan, and then they'll pour in sand so that all the empty spaces they are filled properly here. So this is a predictive life cycle. The project manager has written the plan, and now the project manager is actually following it. Now the second is iteration. How do we iterate it? Now we who the project manager assume that there will be so many changes. There'll be so many changes into the project, right? So project manager decide whether, you know uh, I go with the predictive, I should go with the iterative life cycle, sorry, iterative development approach. What now project manager will do, project manager is given with the this big stone, right? And project manager has to fill this hole with this stone. What project manager will do is, वो इसको उठाएगा and will try to, place it here. And after placing it here, the project manager will actually get to know that, this does not fit in. Project manager will take it away. Project manager, what he will do is, project manager will actually, trim it, maybe from here, right? And project manager will bring it and try to fix this in. Then project manager will see, this is not working. Project manager will again take it away and retrim it and bring it back. Now until or unless, project manager will repeat the iteration of, trimming it, until or unless this stone fits in this pot, in this hole, right? So project manager keeps on iterating the process until or unless this big stone fits into this pot, in this hole. So he will take away the whole stone, और ये उसको रब करेगा जब तक, और फिर उसको वापस लाएगा, और वो इस पूरे प्रोसेस को बार बार रिपीट करता रहेगा until or unless he gets the optimum solution. And the optimum solution is, ये जो stone है ना, ये इसके अंदर fix हो जाएगा. ठीक है, एंड में क्या होगा कि ये स्टोन इसके अंदर फिक्स हो जाएगा. ठीक है, उसने देखो इसको शॉर्ट पार्ट्स में नहीं किया, उसने ना इसके जो प्रोसेसेस है ना, वो उसको रिपीट एंड अगेन करता रहा है. दिस इज व्हाट प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर्स डू इन इटरेटिव development approaches, that they keep on repeating the process until or unless they are actually getting the optimum result. Then comes your incremental. An incremental, let me share screen slides. In incremental, your bigger project is broken down into smaller parts. Now, अगर हम same example को लेके चले pot वाले की, that means the project manager will actually divide the pot whole into smaller, pieces, and project manager will decide that how project manager is going to fill it. Maybe project manager decide that 30% of this hole will be filled by sand, 20% will be, bricks will be used, and the rest 50% will be filled by the concrete, right? So this is increment, that you break down your bigger project into smaller parts and you fill that pot. Now let's just look at this example of Mona Lisa. Here, iterative में the process is being repeated the whole process until unless the full the picture is prepared, and it is easy, it is comparatively easy कि आपकी जो changes हैं आप वो changes बीच में कर सकें. Incremental के अंदर क्या करते हैं, again it is very easy to incorporate changes. You break down your bigger project into small increments and then you begin by starting the increments, you deliver the increment 1, increment 2 as they are planned. ठीक है, और वो डिफरेंट इंक्रीमेंट्स के अंदर वो आपका प्रोजेक्ट तैयार हो जाता है. अच्छा, देयर शुड बी अ लॉजिकल सीक्वेंस इन डेवलपिंग द इंक्रीमेंट. एक लॉजिकल सीक्वेंस होना चाहिए. सेम प्रोजेक्ट, ठीक है, ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि आप उसकी दो ऐसे इंक्रीमेंट पे काम कर रहे हो जो कि उसका बिगनिंग और एंड कनेक्ट कर रहे हो. ठीक है, सेम एक लॉजिकल सीक्वेंस होना चाहिए इंक्रीमेंट्स की डेवलपमेंट के अंदर. अच्छा, तीसरा आपका आ जाता है हाइब्रिड अप्रोच. हाइब्रिड अप्रोच क्या है? हाइब्रिड अप्रोच तब होती है व्हेन यू आर एक्चुअली डेवलपिंग अप्रोच दैट इज ए कॉम्बिनेशन ऑफ अडेप्टिव और प्रिडिक्टिव. अच्छा, वी आर मिसिंग वन हियर एंड दैट इज एजाइल. एजाइल डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच. अच्छा, एजाइल इज नॉट रिटन इन योर बुक, बट इसके मैं एक एक्स्ट्रा बुक आपके साथ शेयर करूंगी, वहां से आपने नोट्स बनाने, बट आप अभी रिटन नोट्स भी बना सकते हैं. अच्छा, एजाइल इज also considered as a iterative approach. ठीक है, especially when we are developing softwares. There are different methodologies even in agile. When we say we are following scrum, kanban, ठीक है, xp, lean development, they are all agile. ठीक है, agile क्या होता है, that agile is that there are different series, ठीक है, and through that series we actually develop our project, and these series are basically called sprints. Things are developed in sprints. Just let me share whiteboard again.
मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही।
मैम आपकी आवाज कोई नहीं आ रही। हेलो।
बेटा अभी मेरी आवाज आ रही है?
यस मैम अब आ रही है।
आई थिंक मैं जो व्हाइट बोर्ड शेयर कर रही हूँ तो उसकी वजह से शायद ये इशू हो रहा है।
हम सब समझे थे शायद आप व्हाइट बोर्ड पे कुछ बना रही हैं, हम इसलिए आवाज नहीं आ रही। तो देख टाइम काफी हो गया है, तब हमने कहा मैम
नहीं,
से
मैं
पूछ लेते हैं।
एक्चुअली आई वाज ड्राइंग इट एंड पैरेलली आई वाज एक्सप्लेनिंग इट। मुझे ये लग रहा है कि शायद व्हेन आई एक्टिवेट दैट ऑप्शन तो उसकी वजह से देयर इज सम इशू एंड इट इज मेसिंग अप विद द वॉइस।
मैम लास्ट लाइक 5 to 10 मिनट से आपकी कोई आवाज नहीं आ रही थी।
और मैं इतना कुछ बोल गई। अच्छा, अब होता क्या है, जो रिक्वायरमेंट्स, जब हम रिक्वायरमेंट्स कलेक्ट करते हैं ना, दीज रिक्वायरमेंट्स आर कलेक्टेड फॉर ऑल टाइप ऑफ प्रोजेक्ट्स। रिक्वायरमेंट्स क्या होती हैं? फर्स्ट वी नीड टू अंडरस्टैंड दिस, ठीक है, बिफोर वी स्टार्ट एजाइल। Requirements are the features, the functions, right, and the tasks that are required to be completed for any project. Requirements business project requirements भी होती हैं, requirements functional requirements भी होती हैं, ठीक है। They are stakeholder requirements too. What project manager do is project manager हर तरह की requirement collect करता है and then start building the project plan based on these requirements. अच्छा, देर आर सर्टन डायरेक्ट रिक्वायरमेंट एंड सम इनडायरेक्ट रिक्वायरमेंट्स टू। किस तरीके से? डायरेक्ट रिक्वायरमेंट्स क्या होती है? फॉर एग्जांपल, you require a resource that have a that have Python skills, you know, आप डिसाइड कर देते हैं कि when you are going to hire that resource, आपने you have to buy raw material and you pre plan it, you decide कि आपने वो particular raw material किस vendor से purchase करना है। ये चीजें सारी ही रिक्वायरमेंट्स होती हैं जो कि डायरेक्ट, जो कि आप एक्चुअली यू आइडेंटिफाई बिफोर स्टार्टिंग योर प्रोजेक्ट। देन देयर आर सर्टेन other requirements that we collect. For example, you may require a warehouse where you can park your material and your machinery that will be used, on site. You may require, a mess for the labor that is staying on site. You also require to have restrooms there for the labor, for the managers, for other people who are involved in the project. You may require a mosque or a you may need to, have a church on the site. अगर आप हमारे पास अगर आप मुस्लिम कंट्री में हैं तो you need to have a mosque so that the employees can actually go there and they can offer their namaz there. तो ये इनडायरेक्ट रिक्वायरमेंट होती है विच आर नॉट डायरेक्टली लिंक्ड विद योर प्रोजेक्ट बट दे आर पार्ट ऑफ योर प्रोजेक्ट. तो प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर इस किस्म की ना तमाम रिक्वायरमेंट लिस्ट डाउन कर लेता है. अच्छा, जिस वक्त हम एजाइल के अंदर होते हैं, ठीक है, एजाइल के अंदर देर आर डिफरेंट वेज to collect these requirements. Why? Because we do not, most of the time we do not have lesson learned reports. ठीक है, why? Because जो project है वो ऐसा है which is very much subject to uncertainty, right? And there are very rapid changes happening in your project. So no, no project that you have already worked on will actually give you the data for such projects. So in that case, the project manager has to make certain efforts to collect the requirements. वो क्या efforts होती है? You have to interview people who have actually worked on the similar project. They can be the project managers, they can be the project team members, or you conduct surveys, or you do observations of the similar project, or you gather data and you conduct different type of analysis. You sit with your team, you brainstorm with your team that what can be the prospective requirements of your project. अच्छा, एजाइल के अंदर आप अप फ्रंट सारी रिक्वायरमेंट्स कलेक्ट नहीं करते, बट ग्रेजुअली आप उसको कर रहे होते हैं. एंड विद आफ्टर कलेक्टिंग एवरी requirement, then what you do is you start developing a sprint on the basis of those requirements, right? Now in that sprint you are actually executing the work that is planned. ये बहुत शॉर्ट स्प्रिंट्स होते हैं, ठीक है, इन स्प्रिंट्स के अंदर काम हो रहा होता है. एंड आफ्टर फिनिशिंग दैट स्प्रिंट there is a meeting that is actually conducted, and that meeting is called retrospective meeting. There is a very little portion of the work that is being completed in that sprint, right? And the sprint can be iterative, it can be incremental. After completing that sprint, the project team holds a meeting with the project manager, and that meeting is called retrospective meeting. What project manager do in that meeting is project manager collect the feedback from the project team members, that what is their feedback on the process. Now on the basis of that feedback and the requirements of the project manager develop the next backlog for the next sprint. So another backlog is developed. अब मैं व्हाइट बोर्ड नहीं एक्टिव करी क्योंकि फिर मेरी आवाज जो है ना वो बंद हो जाएगी. यू नो बैकलॉग फिर डेवलप किया जाता है, ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ दैट बैकलॉग आप यू एक्चुअली बिगिन विद द नेक्स्ट स्प्रिंट. और इस तरीके से ही वी आर वर्किंग ऑन, वी एक्चुअली कीप ऑन वर्किंग ऑन अवर प्रोजेक्ट, दैट वी गैदर द फीडबैक, और उस फीडबैक के बेस पे हम स्प्रिंट डिजाइन करते हैं. दिस इज व्हाट एजाइल इज. हाइब्रिड क्या होती है? हाइब्रिड के अंदर हम लोग अडेप्टिव और प्रिडिक्टिव अप्रोच को मिक्स कर देते हैं. दैट मीन्स हमारे पास प्रिडिक्टिव प्लस इटरेटिव चल रहा होगा, हमारे पास प्रिडिक्टिव प्लस इंक्रीमेंटल या प्रिडिक्टिव प्लस एजाइल चल रहा होगा. नाउ द क्वेश्चन अराइजेस, ये किस तरह से चलता है? अच्छा, यहाँ पर मैं आपको एक छोटी सी एग्जांपल दूंगी. फॉर एग्जांपल हम कहते हैं कि हम एक कम्युनिटी सेंटर इस्टेब्लिश करना चाह रहे हैं. ये हमने क्लास में करनी भी थी, ठीक है, बट मैं भी आपको यहाँ पर बता देती हूँ थोड़ा सा. लेट्स सपोज वी आर डेवलपिंग अ कम्युनिटी सेंटर, ठीक है। अच्छा, कम्युनिटी सेंटर बेटे क्या करता है? टास्क कम्युनिटी सेंटर क्या करता है?
Ma'am, it provides service for the community, like anyone from the community can acquire those resources whenever they need.
इट्स प्रोवाइड एनी टाइप ऑफ सर्विसेज राइट फॉर द कम्युनिटी। अच्छा, अब हम कहते हैं कि वी आर एक्चुअली, अब जब व्हेन इट कम्स टू डेवलपिंग कंस्ट्रक्टिंग द बिल्डिंग ऑफ द कम्युनिटी सेंटर, तो it can it can be developed with a predictive life cycle that you planned everything from where you are going to procure your raw material, uh, from where you are going to hire your labor, from where you are going to procure the fixtures and fitting for the community center, right? You develop it that way. You can develop it with the predictive approach. But what about developing the website for that community center? Website cannot be developed under predictive life cycle. For that you may need to go for incremental, iterative, or maybe agile. So this is one example. Or we plan that after developing the community center, when the building is constructed, we'll actually offer the different type of trainings in our community center. So every training will actually have will follow different approach. For example, when you are giving, so even a one big project can be divided into project where they can follow multiple development life cycles. Now there are certain considerations that we, can you see the screen, the slides?
मैम, यस मैम।
अच्छा
यस।
बेटा, ये जो कम्युनिटी सेंटर है, इसको होल्ड करें, हम लोग ये क्लास के अंदर एक्टिविटी करेंगे, इसके बगैर ये समझ नहीं आएगा, ठीक है। बट अभी आपको सिर्फ इतना याद रखना है, there are two types of development approaches, two groups. One is predictive and the other one is adaptive. Adaptive is further broken down into three categories: iterative, incremental, agile. हम adaptive कब करते हैं? When there are so many uncertainties and the scope of the project is not stable. हमें नहीं पता होता कि what will be the product or the deliverable at the end of the project. So in that case हम we go for the adaptive approaches. Iterative के अंदर we keep on repeating the process until we get the complete solution. Incremental के अंदर we divide our bigger project into smaller chunks, and then we actually start developing those increments and we complete our project. Agile जो होता है, agile is subject to so many changes. इवन वी हैव नो आइडिया कि हम क्या डेवलप करने जा रहे हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल, जिस वक्त कोविड आया था, तो researchers, scientists were actually working on developing vaccine for it, and nobody has an idea कि it is going to be an injectable, it is going to be some oral medicine, या ये कोई syrup होगा. But scientists just started working on it, right? They had the broader scope in their mind that they are going to develop a vaccine, but what will be the form of that vaccine, that was not identified. ठीक है, तो ऐसे प्रोजेक्ट्स के लिए जहां पर हमें डिलीवरेबल का नहीं पता होता, बट व्हेन द ब्रॉडर स्कोप इज क्लियर टू अस, सच प्रोजेक्ट्स फॉलो एजाइल। ठीक है, इन तमाम डेवलपमेंट अप्रोचेस में प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर कलेक्ट्स द रिक्वायरमेंट, एंड ऑन द बेसिस ऑफ द रिक्वायरमेंट्स प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर डिफरेंट प्लान्स डेवलप करता है। सिर्फ एक एजाइल डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच ऐसी है वेयर देयर आर नो डॉक्यूमेंट्स प्रेजेंट, वेयर द प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर कैन एक्चुअली टेक द इंफॉर्मेशन फ्रॉम, but rather the project manager has to actually depend on interviews, on the observation, on different brainstorming session with the project team, with different brainstorming sessions with the team, and project manager actually collect the requirements from those sessions. ये चीजें आपने याद रखनी। बाकी हम एक अभी वो करेंगे नेक्स्ट क्लास के अंदर सेशन, तो उसके अंदर हम करते हैं। अपनी एक्टिविटी जो है ना हम करेंगे और उसमें ये आपको ज्यादा क्लियर हो जाएगा. नाउ देयर आर सर्टेन कंसिडरेशन दैट आर रिक्वायर्ड फॉर सिलेक्टिंग अ डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच. अच्छा, अब ये कंसिडरेशंस किस तरह की होती हैं? दीज कंसिडरेशंस एक्चुअली हेल्प अस व्हेन वी आर सिलेक्टिंग डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच. ऐसा नहीं होता प्रोजेक्ट मैनेजर जस्ट सिट इन अ रूम एंड क्लोजेस हिज आईज और ड्रिंकिंग आफ्टर अ mug of a coffee decide, okay fine, I'll go with this development approach. No, there are certain things that a project manager has to follow, and they are categorized into three: product, service, or result, your project considerations, and the organization considerations. Now these three categories are further broken down into more parts, and these sub parts actually guide the project manager that how the project manager will actually select the development approach. Now for product, service, or result, there are many variables that are associated with the nature of the project, with the type of the project or the service, right? And the nature, the type of that product, service, or result actually influence the development approach that is selected. For that, the following that are mentioned in the slide are the few important variables that need to be considered before selecting or while selecting your development approach. The first one is degree of innovation. This one. Now, what is it is degree of innovation is where the requirements and the scope are very clear. When they are very clear, the scope and the requirements are very clear, ठीक है, that will allow the project manager and the team to plan upfront. So in that case, where the requirements and the scope are clear, the project can be developed with predictive approach. But when the scopes and requirement are innovative, they are not stable, they are changing. Now for such projects, project team, especially when the team have no experience of working on such project, so for that, actually project manager actually go for the adaptive development approach. So when the degree of innovation is high, the project manager go with the adaptive approaches. When the degree of innovation is low, that means things are more stable, there is not much innovation, then the project team can go with the predictive. The second is requirement certainty. Requirement certainty is that when your requirements are very easy to define, very easy to collect, right? Then the predictive approach fits really well. And when your requirements are changing, they are well volatile, they are uncertain, they are complex. So for such projects, we actually go for the adaptive approach. These are few factors that actually influence. अच्छा आप देखेंगे every factor is linked with the previous one. Okay, we covered the first two. Third one is scope stability. Now, when the scope is stable, right? अच्छा स्कोप अभी हमने ऊपर भी बात की थी कि when there is not much innovation, तो आप प्रेडिक्टिव करेंगे. इनोवेशन ना होने का मतलब ये कि स्कोप भी स्टेबल है, स्कोप इज स्टेबल एज वेल एज द रिक्वायरमेंट्स आर स्टेबल. ठीक है, तो अगेन इज व्हेन द स्कोप इज स्टेबल, you will go with the predictive development approach. And when the scope is subject to so many changes, subject to then that means that your project is closer to adaptive side of the development life cycle. Next is ease of change. There, if the scope is stable, that means your requirements are certain. ठीक है, आपकी scope और requirements are very closely linked. When the scope is stable, your requirements are very certain. So if your scope and requirements are certain and stable, so the the nature of the deliverable makes it very difficult to manage and incorporate changes. Then predictive approach is the best. And otherwise is if there is uncertainty when your deliverable can be managed with so many changes, in that case we actually go with the adaptive approach. Then is delivery options. We covered in the last section different delivery options: single delivery, multiple delivery, right? So when most of the time when the product services, they are developed in small pieces, right? For example, they can follow iterative, incremental, or adaptive approaches. But bigger projects, for example, nuclear reactor plants, for example, hydro project plants, for example, your dams, for example, a sugar mill. So such big projects can, they should be planned under predictive approach, and you deliver that project in one go. You cannot break them into different pieces, but you prefer to deliver it into one big approach, and for that you follow single delivery. So most of the time project that are following single delivery will follow predictive approach, and those projects that are following multiple periodic continuous delivery, they'll follow iterative, incremental, and agile. Then the next factor that should be considered, and that is directly related with your product, is risk. So when the risks are very high, right, and it is very difficult for you to you know identify all the risk of your project, in such cases we go with the adaptive. But when you can easily identify the risk, you can do the upfront planning for those risks. You can write a risk response plan. So such projects actually follow predictive development approaches. Then is safety requirements. Safety requirements of the product and your employees. Beta, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Because बहुत ज़्यादा
Yes,
खामोशी हो
I hear you.
Okay.
यस
uh,
मैम आपकी आवाज आ रही है।
okay beta. So when the product safety requirements, when you can pre-plan them, you go with the predictive approach, right? And when you have to identify them, you have to plan them, create them, integrate, and you can test. You go with the predictive. But when things are rapidly changing, you do not know that what will the safety requirements that will be required in future, and what is the nature of those safety requirements. In that case, the project manager go with the adaptive. Then are the certain regulations of what? Regulations coming from the external environment. So when regulations are fixed, they are stable, we go with the predictive. And when they are changing, when there are no documentation that is provided, when there is no demonstration that is required, we go with the adaptive. So one thing that is very clear from here is, when anything anything that relates to the project is stable, is not changing, we go with the predictive. And when there is some uncertainty, there is ambiguity in the things, we go with the adaptive approaches: iterative, incremental, or agile. So when the requirements are not clear, when the scope is not clear, when your project is subject to so many changes, when your project is actually delivered into smaller pieces to your stakeholder, then the risk cannot be identified, the safety requirements are not clear, the regulations are not clear, and they are changing. In such cases, you go with the adaptive. When all these things are stable and you can do the planning before starting your project, we follow the predictive approach. Okay, these are few factors that you need to remember, you need to consider. before selecting your developed life cycle that pertains to one factor, one category, that is product, service, or result. There are two more categories. One is left is your project, second one, and the third one is your organization. The project factors that actually influence the development approach are mostly centered around the stakeholders, the scheduling constraints, and the availability of funds for that project. Now, these three things will actually influence that how the project is going to be handled. The first one is stakeholders. Most of the project that are following adaptive methods, adaptive life cycle, their stakeholders are rigorously involved in all the processes. They are called for meetings, everything is discussed with them, right? And then they are informed. Whereas the projects following the predictive approach, there is one meeting that is conducted with the stakeholders, and that is when you are done with the planning, right? That means कि आपने जब 12 प्लान और 3 baselines बना ली हैं, you will then conduct one meeting with your stakeholder and then you will deliver your project. But in predictive life cycles, you keep on having, meetings. There are multiple meetings with your all stakeholders. Scheduling constraints. If something has to deliver early, one portion of your project is required to be delivered early, even when your project is not finished, right? In that case, we follow iterative or adaptive or incremental agile approach, and it is more beneficial. अच्छा, ये किस तरह के project होते हैं? For example, whenever we are working on some software, we have to, show a interface to our client. That means interface has to be delivered. So software is developed under iterative, incremental, or agile. When there is no such requirement that a portion of your project has to be delivered early, that those projects can actually follow the predictive. Then is funding availability. When there are funding uncertainty, that you have no idea that when you are receiving the funds and how much funds you will be receiving at what point of time in future. So for that projects, you go with the adaptive. But when all the funds are available to you before starting the project, right, you go with the predictive because you have everything, every budget, you have all the money in your hand, right? So you can do all the planning before you start your project. But when there is a funding constraints, funding uncertainty, that means that even when you have to, launch one portion of your deliverable, that may require some investment for further elaborating the project or that product, or even one market testing of your product requires certain investment. So such products that are actually delivered in multiple and periodic delivery, such projects, and they face funding unavailability or funding constraints, these projects can be developed under adaptive approaches. The third factor is organization. And there are certain organization factors that actually influence our selection of development approach. And these factors are your organizational structure, the culture, the capability, project team size, location, and in the right. These are the few factors where the organization actually influence. Now, what is the structure of your organization? What is the reporting structure? Are you working in a bureaucratic organization, more functional organization, or you are working in a matrix, strong matrix organization, or in a balanced structure organization? Now, your organizational structure, we have covered the structures, right?
Right.
So these the organizations that tends to have more flatter structures, For example, they are in a matrix, but strong matrix, right? Such organizational structures support adaptive methods because it is more easy to communicate among different stakeholders. But when the organizational structure is more bureaucratic, it's weak matrix or it is functional, in such cases the you have to go with the predictive approach. Then is the culture. Your predictive approach works best with the organization where the organization is more centralized. Centralized organizations are those organizations where all the decision making is actually taking place at at a one level, where there is a group of people taking all the decisions and the rest of the organization has to follow it. Now centralized culture, it best fits better with the predictive approach, whereas the other culture where there are the teams are considered as a more self-managed teams. The decision is actually even the lower management is taking part into the decision making. For such organization, adaptive approach fits more better. Then is your organizational capability. बेटा आप लोगों को समझ आ भी रहा है?
मैम तकरीबन
Yes,
तकरीबन
ma'am. We are getting you.
ठीक हो गया. Then is your organizational capability. Organizational capability means that how easily your organization can actually adapt to different changes when the resistance is very low, right? When organization is very adaptive, right? When the people of the organization, they are welcoming toward the change, in such conditions the organizations can actually begin their project under adaptive. But when there is so much resistance, it becomes very difficult for the organization to actually shift the mindset of people, not only at the executive level but throughout the organization. When the reporting structure is very rigid, when the attitude is not flexible, so in that case organizations go with the predictive development approach. The next one, which is very important, and the last one, project team size and the location. Project team size is very important factor. uh, when there are very small, where there when they are very small project team, for example इसका जो threshold दिया गया है, that is 7 plus minus 2 5, that means teams ranging from the member of 5 members till 9 to 10 members. uh, Such teams are actually they can work better with the adaptive approaches. That means smaller teams can work better with adaptive approaches, and the larger teams, project teams, goes fit with the predictive side of the spectrum. This was the project team and the location. When teams are not geographically dispersed, they sits closed, they are located at the same place, then adaptive is more appropriate. But when they are geographically dispersed, right, or maybe a portion of team is working online and the one few people are working in office in okay, for such teams and predictive life cycle is more appropriate. That means bigger teams working on different geographical location, or teams such as where the mostly the team members are working remotely, such teams should go with the predictive approach. But where the teams are small and they are geographical located at one place, such teams should go with the adaptive approaches. And this is one very important factor, that your project team size and location, this is one very important factor that actually help us in सिलेक्टिंग द डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच. अच्छा, इससे पहले तक तो आपको चीजें क्लियर नहीं होंगी दैट हाउ वी कैन सिलेक्ट द डेवलपमेंट अप्रोच फॉर अवर प्रोजेक्ट. बट आफ्टर दिस, if not 100%, at least 30% of the things are clear to you, that how you are going to select the development life cycle of your project. Acha, now we'll go for break. Let me see how many slides are left. Okay, now we'll go for a break, right? And after coming back from break, we'll start with our life cycle and phase definition. Right, class?
All right, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
What
We'll meet.
what does
We'll
it
meet
explain
at.
culture again?
जी बेटे.
Can you explain culture again?
कैन आई एक्सप्लेन कल्चर अगेन? जी बिल्कुल कर सकती हूँ. अच्छा बेटे देखो, देर आर डिफरेंट कल्चर्स दैट ऑर्गेनाइजेशन आर फॉलोइंग. ठीक है, इसकी जो मेन टू कैटेगरीज हैं, दैट इज सेंट्रलाइज्ड एंड डिसेंट्रलाइज्ड. ठीक है. अच्छा, इसके अलावा और बहुत सारे और फैक्टर्स भी होते हैं. ठीक है, फॉर एग्जांपल जिस तरह से आपका जो है, व्हाट आर द टाइप ऑफ डिफरेंट लीडरशिप ट्रेड्स, how the organization is actually shaping employee perceptions and behavior. But हम जिस फैक्टर के ऊपर कल्चर को देखेंगे, दैट इज योर, that what is the collection of values, what are the different practices, and that actually divides the culture into two main, that your organization have a decentralized culture or a centralized culture. Now, we need to understand that what is decentralization and what is centralization. Decentralization is when the organization, it is directly related with the decision making, right? Now, decentralized organizations, there is no formal decision making. The decision making power is distributed across multiple teams, multiple individuals, multiple levels. So for such organizations where culture is more decentralized, that means there is no one group of people taking all the decisions. For such organizations, adaptive development life cycle is more appropriate. And when I say adaptive, that means iterative, incremental, and agile. ठीक हो गया. But for organization that are more centralized, they are more bureaucratic, where there are some responsible personnel, and these personnel are actually responsible for uh, you know taking decisions. They are responsible for planning, they are responsible for devising the action taking activities, right? A group of people, right? So for such organization
Yes,
where
ma'am.
culture is more centralized, we go with the predictive development approach.
Okay.
G, any other
Yes,
question?
got
No, ma'am.
Okay, it's 10:30 almost. We'll meet at 10:55, and then we'll begin with life cycles, and we'll try to finish. Hopefully, we'll finish this lecture today. Just
Inshallah, ma'am.
stay connected to the class, and we'll meet back at 10:55.
Okay, ma'am.
G class, are you all here?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay, let me share slides. The slides are shared. Okay, so we covered development life cycles and the factors that are required to be considered for before selecting our development life cycle, and out of which your they were actually the factors were divided into three categories: product, service or result, project and organization. And all these three broader categories actually come with their own factors, and every factors equally contribute toward the selection of development life approach. Now the next thing that a project manager has to do is to decide on that what will be the phases, and to define the life cycle of the project. They are all three different things: development cadence, development approach, and life cycles. They are different, they are not same, right? Now life cycles come with few basic phases that include feasibility, design, build, test, deploy, and close. These are the six general phases of any life cycle, right? And we have covered that. I have shown you that diagram in the second lecture, and that diagram had the phases on the top. Then there were process groups, then there were certain domains under it, and there were principles. So these are the six general phases that are already there. Now the project manager has to decide and select the phases for his or her project. Now whenever we are exiting from one phase to the next, there is a phase gate that is present, and these phase gates are ji beta, and these phase gates come with just give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. My little one is in. No, this is not stegosaurus. These phase gates are present, between these life cycle phases, and they are also known as stage gate. Now, every phase gate come with its own exit criteria that we have to fulfill before we can actually, proceed to the next phase. And these criteria are also known as acceptance criteria for deliverable. And these criteria are also linked with the contractual obligations, meeting specific performance targets, or some other tangible measures. Let's just look at these six phases, that what they are actually, and what do we mean when we select any particular phase for our project. First one is feasibility. We all know that what is feasibility. Feasibility is a phase where the business case is developed. We check whether whatever we are intended to work on is actually workable or not, and we will be able to deliver the required outcome, right? For that reason we conduct the feasibility. Then is design. Design is basically the planning and analysis, right? On way planning and analysis that lead to a particular design, and that design is directly linked with the project very deliverables that is required to be developed. Third one is build. We build our deliverable on different measures. For example, the quality standards. For example, the risk. We build our project around them. So all the especially quality assurance related activities, they are actually related to the building phase. Then is testing. Testing is when we are actually inspecting our deliverables. So to inspect, we test it, right? And that is prototype testing. So, and that is done before we get into the final quality review and making our product go live, right? So testing is one criteria that is provided by the customer, or that ensures that the customer will actually accept our project. Testing is another phase. Then is deploy. Deploy is where we actually all the deliverables are put into one stage where there are certain more activities that are linked with the project. For example, we actually look for the benefit realization, that what are the benefits that your project is actually delivering. uh, Maybe the change is required in the organization, so such plans are completed before deploying it. Then is closing. Closing is official closing of your project, where there are different documents, there are different models and templates that are prepared. Okay, and project team members are actually responsible for it. Different team members are assigned to different artifacts and they prepare it. And once they are done, the contracts are closed. Now we'll actually now look at different type of phases that are defined for the projects. So generally a predictive life cycle follow this phase cycle. We conduct feasibility, we conduct design, we build it, we test it, we deploy it, and we close it. That means a predictive life cycle generally comprised of all the phases, right, that are actually mentioned. But for other life cycle, for example, for iterative or for incremental, the it is totally dependent on the project manager that what phases actually perfectly fit for the deliverable. So here is an example. The project manager can actually select plan, design, or build. The project manager can go with the selecting, feasibility, build, deploy, close. So for adaptive life cycles, it is totally dependent on the project manager that what will be the life cycles, what will be the phases of the life cycle that his or her project is going to be followed. Now, this is an example of another agile project, right? Most of the time, agile development approach work this way, and this is the life cycle of it. That we define the broader vision of our product or deliverable, and on the basis of that, iterations are being done. A retrospective meeting is conducted here between the two iterations, any two iterations, right? And during that retrospective meeting, feedback is gathered, prioritization is done for the next backlog. The backlog is prepared and is moved to the second iteration. Now here in agile, these retrospective meetings is known as the phase gates or the stage gates, and they come with their own acceptance criteria, so that you have to fulfill those criteria to move to the next phase. Now, linking your deliverable, delivery cadence, and development approach. See, जो भी मैं आपको बताई थी कि we'll do an example of community center. This is related to it. I'll just skip these two slides because जब हम class में activity करेंगे, then I'll run it. ठीक हो गया? Let's move to the next one. This one. Project management is a process where we have to, manage certain work, and there are certain life cycles that are attached to that work. Now, these process groups are divided into 5 categories: initiation, planning, executing, monitoring, excuse me, Now these processes are initiating, planning, excuse me. After selecting our life cycle phases, development approach, and the mode of delivery, we have to look at the process groups for our project. So there are 5 process groups and they remain intact. No matter you are in predictive, you are in adaptive, excuse me. Ji class, I'm so sorry. Okay, no matter we are actually working in iterative, predictive, adaptive, incremental or agile, ये जो 5 प्रोसेस ग्रुप्स हैं ये रहते हैं और एज इट इज रहते हैं, देयर इज नो चेंज इनटू इट. Excuse me, sorry. And they are initiating, planning, executing, monitoring and control, and closing. Just give me 2 minutes, class. Okay. So, no matter where in which development approach we are working, the process groups will remain the same. And there are 5 process groups: initiation, planning, executing, monitoring and control, and closing of your project. Now we'll see how these process groups actually interact with each other. Whenever we are starting our project, we are actually working in initiation process group. Now, this initiation process group have its own criteria and that we look into very much detail. Okay? For example, we write a project charter here. We develop a stakeholder register initiation process group. Until unless we are done with these 2 main documents, we cannot move forward to the planning process group. So even the process groups come with its own acceptance criteria. Initiation process group gives some information to the planning process group. On the basis of that information, there are multiple plans that are prepared. There are 12 plans and 3 baselines that are prepared by the project manager in the planning process group. Once we are done with those plans, once we are done with those 3 baselines, they provide certain information to the execution and the project is actually now started here. Execution comes with its own standard, right, when the team is working on that project. Now execution is being controlled by monitoring and controlling. So if anything is changed here or any information is changed or extra required, the execution send that information to monitoring and control, and monitoring and control process group then decides whether to send back that information to initiation group or the planning process group, right? If there is no change required, then the project is further moved forward to the closing process group, and further your project is actually processed for the closing and the documentation. All the documentation that is related to the closure of your projects are being prepared. हम इन 5 प्रोसेस ग्रुप्स को बहुत डिटेल में देखेंगे. हमारी तमाम डोमेन्स जो हैं, all the 8 domains are actually completely covered in these 5 process groups. तो जब हम इन 5 को देख रहे होंगे, we are actually gradually covering the domains of our project management body of knowledge. This is again life cycle and project management processes. how do we set the life cycles and under which the processes actually work. जो पीछे हमने अभी एक framework देखा, that is more a general framework of the project processes group. Even when we are, when we are working in adaptive, that means there are separate phases to everything. So those life cycles come with its own complete set of process group, and we have to run it. For example, when we are collecting the requirements, we have to initiate it, we have to plan it, we have to execute it, and then it is being monitored and controlled, and it is closed. Similarly for the rest of the phases too. So all the phases come with its own process groups, and it is very much required that we manage our work this way. ठीक है, so that जो फेलियर है उसको मैक्सिमम पे जाके अवॉइड किया जा सके. ओके, अभी हमने अभी तक role of project manager, some assumptions about project manager, organizational structures, development cadence, the life cycles and development approach, consideration to develop approach, we end the process flow. We have covered all these things. Now we are formally getting into that why do we need to initiate project, because now we are moving toward initiating the project, and what are the actually required documents, what are the requirements that are set by the project management institute to begin the project. We are now starting it. So, why do we initiate project? What do you think? G class, why do we initiate projects?
Value creation.
For value creation. Yeah, there are four
Upgrade.
reasons. There are four reasons for which we actually initiate our project. First one is meeting regulatory requirement. Second one is satisfy stakeholder needs requirements. Third one is create, improve, or fixing any product or any problem. Fourth one is we have to implement any changes, and those changes can relate to technological changes too. So these are the four main reasons that we actually initiate a project. That means if we are into new product development, we initiate a project, or we have to improve any existing product, we can initiate a project. Initiating a project means you are taking your organization from the current state to some future state. That will cost you some time, but will provide you with some business value. And what is that value? Who is going to tell me? What do we mean by value?
Benefit.
Yes, the benefits for the organization and benefits for the customer. For the organization, the value is the profits that organization is making, and for the customer, the benefit is all the value is all the benefit that the customer is obtaining from that product or service. Now project selection comes with certain more criteria, certain more things, and we need to actually identify them before we select the project. We have discussed the organizational context in detail where the projects actually exist. The system of value delivery, the internal environment, and the external environment. We have discussed in the second lecture. So it is very important for the project manager not only to understand the organizational context, but also understand that what is actually happening before the project is officially initiated. The project manager should know the complete history of that project, that why it is so important for the project manager to work on it, why that project is, what are the reasons that make that project so important for the organization, right? Now every organization is following some formal process for project selection. It is not just कि किसी ने एक project का has offered some project and आपकी organization उसको accept right away, just select it. There is some formal process that the project that you are taking on are actually aligned with the strategic goals of your organization, and the project selection committee that there is a project selection committee that is actually made, and they have almost the top management is actually involved in that selection committee, and they are responsible to evaluate the project proposals. The expected project managers are not part of that project selection committee, and not actually part of that project selection committee. Why? Because they'll be a bit biased toward those projects. So they are the third people who are responsible for evaluating the project proposals and deciding that whether these projects actually relate with the strategic objectives or not. Acha, then we have discussed that project manager is not involved in the project selection. So it is very important that we need to understand why project manager is not involved. The first reason is that why project manager is not involved is project manager may be biased toward it. Why? Because project manager may be looking for his personal growth for that, linking with that project. So he might not be acknowledging the value, the original value of that project. So that is one big reason is not he is not part of that project selection committee, because he cannot, without any biasness, cannot identify the value of that project for the organization, that that project is going, and the significance of that project for the organization. Project manager becomes the part of that committee only if it is a new, altogether a new project for your organization, or that project is initiated to meet some regulatory requirement or compliance requirement, or you have to come up with a solution. It is some problem already existing, and that project is initiated to actually handle some to provide some feasible solution, and that solution has to be very least expensive. These are the only three possibilities when the project manager becomes part of that project selection committee. But the project manager needs to keep a reason for being selected for that project throughout the the process groups, beginning from the initiation till the closure, so that the objectives that are actually set for the project are clearly achieved. Then there are some more pre-project activities that are conducted before initiating your project, and they are the financial activities. For example, the project manager calculates the net present value. I believe that you all have covered majority of them. Return on investment in your cost course, return on investment, internal rate of return, payback period, and benefit cost ratio. Some of these ratios are calculated to identify that whether it is feasible to initiate that project or not. This slide is related to an activity. Again, I'm skipping it. Why? Because these are related to the cost, and I believe क्योंकि हमारे पास time भी कम and we have to finish this, तो I believe कि ये आपने कर ली. अगर नहीं है तो हम ये activity फिर class के अंदर करेंगे. Now let us consider, अब हम एक एग्जाम्पल करते हैं और उस एग्जाम्पल से हमें क्लियर हो जाएगा कि what is the actually mechanism for selecting any project. ठीक है, हम एक प्रोजेक्ट को इनिशिएट किन प्रोसेस से गुजर के करते हैं, अभी हम उसको देखते हैं. एंड फॉर दैट रीजन वील यूज अ PMP training course as a project example to understand that what are the different functions that an organization actually takes when they are starting the project. And the same will be, ये बेटा यही information आपने याद रखनी है, because the same information will be required for so many other examples that we will be using for in the upcoming lectures. So there are different scenarios that we will be reading. The scenario number 1 says there is a vision of that university that during an annual board meeting of XYZ University, it was decided that the university will now focus on improving its ranking. The top management has decided that this is their broader vision that they'll improve their ranking. Okay, now from that vision, the strategic objectives were obtained to raise the quality, and the objectives were to raise the quality of education, align itself with the HEC requirement, and address any lapses that affect the university national ranking. That is more focus on improving the quality of existing program rather than growth or increasing profits. Now from these strategic objectives, यहाँ पर उसने दो objectives define कर लिए हैं. एक ये कि they'll focus on improving the quality of existing programs, ठीक है, more than the growth and the profit. So they have identified three business drivers for their upcoming project. The first one is quality, growth and profit. Now it is very clear कि इनकी ranking के अंदर अगर हम इन तीनों को rank करें business driver को, तो quality is ranked as the priority business driver. Now from these business driver, there are certain goals that are actually devised. Revising curriculum, faculty induction criteria, ठीक है, इससे ये क्वालिटी अपनी improve कर सकते हैं, and they can actually increase the admission criteria to improve the quality and few other processes, or they'll introduce some faculty development programs so that when the faculty will they'll focus on developing the faculty, that will automatically actually help them in improving the quality of education in the university. So the three business drivers were identified and the priorities are given to them. Quality 60%, profit 30%, and growth 10%. Now, another scenario came, and from that scenario, let's read it. During HEC recent visit to various universities that are offering MSPM program, it was observed that the number of PhDs in the MSPM faculty was lesser. अच्छा बेटा, who is going to read it? आप में से कोई इसको पढ़े, ऐसे आप सब सोए हुए हैं. Class who will volunteer to read it?
Yes, ma'am.
इसको बेटा कौन पढ़ेगा? ये सिर्फ पढ़ना है, फिर मैं समझाती हूँ इसको.
Okay, ma'am. Ma'am, ये blue वाला?
हाँ जी, ये जो सिनेरियो 2 है.
Scenario 2. We will use the conducting a PMP training course project as an example to understand these actions. We will start with a general description of this project and we'll keep adding further details.
अच्छा नहीं बेटा, हम लोग हम इस स्लाइड से मूव कर चुके हैं.
मेरे पास तो ये स्लाइड शो रही है.
मैम ये स्लाइड शो हो रही है.
अल्लाह अकबर, आई मूव टू सिनेरियो 2. अभी देखें ठीक हुआ है?
Yes, ma'am.
अभी सिनेरियो 2 वाली स्लाइड आई है सामने?
Yes, ma'am, वो आ गई है.
हाँ बेटा, इसको पढ़े. सिनेरियो 1 तो हम डिस्कस कर चुके हैं, that there was a vision that is provided by the university top management, and under that vision few business strategic objectives were defined, and goals were actually defined from those business strategic objectives, and from those goals we have prioritized our business drivers, right? ये एक scenario था. Now there is another scenario, that is scenario 2. बेटा just read it.
During HEC's recent visit to various universities that are offering MSPM program, it was observed that the number proportion of PhDs in MSPM faculty was lesser than the number proportion mentioned in HEC program requirement. The same point was highlighted by HEC's staff during their visit to XYZ University. However, the concerned HOD at XYZ University was well prepared and briefed the HEC staff about the root cause of this observation through facts and figures. It was highlighted that the available number of PhDs in PM is so less that majority of universities are unable to meet HEC's minimum requirement of PhDs. However, at the same time, these universities just can't stop MSPM program due to increased needs of trained project managers in the country. The HOD also proposed a solution of this problem and suggested that HEC needs to relax its rules for MSPM program for some time and consider PhDs in engineering management, business management having PMP certification as an equivalent to PhD in PM. Meanwhile, HEC may start encouraging universities and general public to go for PhD in PM from abroad through scholarships, etc.
ठीक हो गया. सो सिनेरियो टू ये हुआ कि एचईसी ने विजिट किया universities को, and during the visit to the XYZ university, who are actually having a board meeting and deciding goals for their university, the HSC get to know that they have a project management department and the number of PhDs that are required to run a program is less than the HEC criteria, right? So they actually conducting a meeting with the top management, and the same time the top management actually conducting a meeting with the HOD, and HOD proposed a solution that HEC can look countrywide, that there are very few PhD in project management available, and it is difficult for them to hire because that involves some extra cost. So to that, the HOD actually proposed a solution that HEC is required to relax the criteria while they actually prepare their faculty for PhDs or for the PMP certification, and they actually recommended that HEC should consider people with PMP certification as an equivalent to the PhD in project management, right? So meanwhile, the universities will actually also send their employees to the foreign countries to do their PhD in project management. Now, this is the next scenario. Who's going to read this?
Scenario 3.
जी बेटा, आपके अलावा कोई और पढ़े.
Okay, ma'am. मैम कोई भी part read कर लेता.
Hello, ma'am. Can I?
जी बेटा.
Okay, ma'am. Scenario 3. After their visit, HEC officials discussed the matter during their next organizational meeting and highlighted the idea proposed by the HOD of XYZ University. The proposal was deliberately at various levels during next few months and finally got an approval. HEC issued a notification about the same to all universities.
ठीक हो गया. नेक्स्ट सिनेरियो में ये हुआ कि HEC को प्रपोजल ठीक लगा, उन्होंने डिस्कस किया और उन्होंने तमाम यूनिवर्सिटीज को नोटिफिकेशन कर दिया that they will temporarily consider the other PhDs in other disciplines, for example engineering and management, right? But they need to start working on the faculty development program. Now, this is the scenario 4. Ji, who's going to read it?
Can I read?
जी बेटे.
मैम ये इसके ऊपर ये ग्रीन कलर का एक लिखा है, वो बैक पे पढ़ा नहीं जा रहा, सामने आया वैसे कुछ.
बेटा मैंने स्लाइड शो प्रेजेंटेशन में भी इसको लेकर आई हूँ. आपको विजिबल है प्रेजेंटेशन?
नहीं मैम, वो ब्लू
नहीं
वाले
नहीं.
वो ग्रीन कलर का लिखा हुआ है, कुछ पीछे कुछ लिखा हुआ है, नजर नहीं आ रहा.
Okay, scenario 4 is that after receiving the notification from the notification from HEC, the campus had called the concerned HOD to discuss that what will be their further plans. After this meeting, HOD start working on different options, including that they'll now find and hire PhDs with PMP certifications from the market, and they'll encourage the already existing PhD faculty to get their PMP certification, right? Now, after discussing the idea with the HR and other faculty members, the HOD concluded that they need to facilitate the existing PhD faculty that they get PMP certification, and it is a more viable option for them. Now, accordingly, HOD has developed a project proposal. Now, there are three project proposals, right? And developed a business case and suggested to conduct a training course during summer, which is linked with the growth, right? Now, that training program comes with 50% discount for faculty of the same university and students. This is now improving quality, right? Then a full fee for working professionals from the market. Now, university is giving 50% discount to the faculty and the students so that they enroll and get PMP certification, right? And they are charging full fee from the working professionals from the industry, and it is directly linked with their business driver of priority. Now, the idea was prepared, ठीक है, that the faculty for PMP should be get certified so that the university can meet the HEC requirement. Now, what do you think? Okay, this is a viable project? जी क्लास, what do you think? कि ये एक viable project है? बेटा कुछ क्राइटेरियाज होते हैं जिसकी बेस के ऊपर हम एक्चुअली डिसाइड करते हैं कि प्रोजेक्ट वाइबल है कि नहीं है, और हम उसकी रेटिंग करते हैं। नाउ जस्ट लुक एट दोस क्राइटेरियाज। हमने 3 बिजनेस ड्राइवर सिलेक्ट किए थे, ठीक है। देवर इम्प्रूवमेंट इन क्वालिटी, प्रॉफिट एंड ग्रोथ। उसकी बेसिस के ऊपर देवर 3 different project proposals that were prepared, out of which one was, जो कि उस सिनेरियो के रिजल्ट में आया था, that was developing a PMP training for the faculty। और 2 और प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल्स दिए गए थे, जिसमें से एक ये था कि the university start a new degree program, or they actually introduce a hybrid program where they actually introduce online mode for an existing program। अच्छा, अब क्या किया जाता है, when we are into selection the project, we actually map the project proposals against the business drivers। एंड वो जो हमने पीछे देखा था ना, NPV, IRR, इसके इन चीजों के थ्रू हम लोग ये जो वैल्यूएशन होती है ना बिजनेस ड्राइवर्स की, हम वो करते हैं फॉर प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल्स। तो ये वैल्यूएशन करके ये कुछ ग्रेडिंग थी इन तीनों प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल्स को दे दी गई। नाउ वी लुक एट द टोटल स्कोर, और हम वहां से देखेंगे कि जिसका स्कोर ज्यादा होता है, we usually actually go with that project। So 35 is give total score is given to this first program, 43 is to the second program, and 73% is given to the PMP training faculty program। So whenever a project is selected, it is not just that the selection committee sits together and they decide on whether to go with that project or not. That selection committee is responsible to look that whether the proposed project is related to your vision of the organization. If yes, the next step is to identify that your strategic objectives or the organization are linked with the project, right? And आपके जो business drivers हैं, जो आपके organization के हैं, they also have to align with that project। अगर ये सब चीजें अलाइन नहीं होंगी, दैट मीन्स इट इज नॉट मीनिंगफुल टू बिगिन विद दैट प्रोजेक्ट, और उसकी स्कोरिंग विल बी इवन दैट विल बी रिफ्लेक्टेड इन द स्कोरिंग, कि दैट प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल मे नॉट बी स्कोरिंग गुड numbers against the business drivers। तो प्रोजेक्ट सिलेक्शन कमेटी इस पूरे प्रोसेस से गुजरती है, और उसके बाद दे एक्चुअली सिलेक्ट दी प्रोजेक्ट। ये पर्पसेस डिफरेंट हो सकते हैं, बट जो कंप्लीट प्रोसेस होता है वो ये प्रोसेस होता है थ्रू विच द प्रोजेक्ट प्रपोजल्स आर सिलेक्टेड। ओके, अब ये एक रेड कलर की स्लाइड आपको नजर आ रही होगी।
मैम वो स्लाइड हमारी 36 पे रुकी हुई है, 37 पे नहीं।
36 पे रुकी हुई है बेटा,
अब 30 पे आई है।
बेटा आप पे इसके पास स्लाइड शो नहीं चल रहा?
अब 37
मैम
पे है
37 पे स्लाइड।
अब 37 पे आया है। अच्छा बेटा ये वो तमाम एक्सप्लेनेशन है जो मैं दे चुकी हूँ अभी, पता है ऑनलाइन में यही होता है।
यस मैम हमें पता है।
These are the three proposals that were proposed and they are measured against these three business drivers that were identified. वो जो सिनेरियो 1 के अंदर मीटिंग हुई थी उसके अंदर ये 3 बिजनेस ड्राइवर्स और इनकी प्रायोरिटी सिलेक्ट कर ली गई थी. What selection committee do is they actually evaluate the project proposals against the business drivers, and the project that scores higher numbers on the business drivers are usually selected. ठीक हो गया. तो प्रोजेक्ट सिलेक्शन का मैं आपको कंप्लीट बता चुकी हूँ. अच्छा मुझे बताइए आपकी स्लाइड चेंज हुई है?
मैम
यस
37।
लास्ट स्लाइड्स के ऊपर 7 शो हो रहा है हमें.
नहीं, आपके पास एक रेड कलर की स्लाइड विद रेड बैकग्राउंड विद वाइट टेक्स्ट ये शो हो रही है?
नो मैम
No, ma'am.
37
नो
पे
मैम
है,
मैं वो
38 शो नहीं हो रही.
अच्छा अब देखिए अब हो रही है.
नो मैम. यस मैम अब होगी है.
ठीक हो गया. अच्छा बेटा अभी तक हमने वाई टू इनिशिएट प्रोजेक्ट एंड हाउ डू वी सिलेक्ट अवर प्रोजेक्ट इसको भी देख लिया. नाउ वी आर एक्चुअली मूविंग इनटू इनिशिएशन. दैट मीन्स हमने प्रोजेक्ट सिलेक्ट करना सीख लिया और अब हम इनिशिएशन प्रोसेस ग्रुप को स्टार्ट कर रहे हैं. ठीक हो गया. ये वाली स्लाइड
यस
हम क्लास के अंदर करेंगे बिकॉज दिस इज अ वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट स्लाइड.
ओके मैम.
मैम.
एंड दिस स्लाइड्स कम विद अनदर लेक्चर और वो फिर हम लोग इंशाल्लाह नेक्स्ट क्लास में करेंगे. अभी मैं इसमें इसलिए नहीं जा रही हूँ बिकॉज देर इज सो मच इनटू इट, देर इज सो मच इनटू इट. और ये तकरीबन वो तमाम वही चीजें जो हम कर चुके हैं बट हम इसको क्लास में एक दफा करेंगे ताकि आपकी वो चीजें जो क्लियर नहीं थी ऑनलाइन वो मजीद क्लियर हो जाए. और दो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें इसमें, डेवलप प्रोजेक्ट चार्टर or develop stakeholder register. These are the two documents, artifacts that are prepared in this phase, process group. अब हम ऑफिशियली नेक्स्ट क्लास से प्रोसेस ग्रुप्स के अंदर मूव कर जाएंगे. ऑन दिस नोट आज का सेशन इधर ही एंड होता है. आई विल जस्ट टेक योर अटेंडेंस नाउ. ठीक है. एंड नेक्स्ट क्लास में प्लीज कम प्रिपेयर्ड. और बेटा सीआर यू हैव टू इन्फॉर्म मी इफ वी आर गोइंग टू हैव क्लास ऑन फ्राइडे और सैटरडे मॉर्निंग बिकॉज देयर
ओके
इज अ. ठीक है बेटा ये आपने लाजमी करना है.
Ma'am, we might have a class on Saturday morning.
सॉरी.
We might have a course class on Saturday morning, and Friday ko most of the people cannot take classes because they have work to do. We all do.
I'm perfectly all right with Saturday morning too if you guys can come. I have no issues with it.
ओके मैम.
Okay, let's take your attendance. Fawad Zeeb. Fawad Zeeb Khan. Hadi Zafar.
प्रेजेंट मैम।
Haider Hamid.
प्रेजेंट मैम.
Leng.
Yes, present.
Awais Khan.
Present ma'am.
Mohammad Bilal.
Present, ma'am.
Hamza bin Nasser. Hamza bin Asad. Mohammad Khalid.
Present, ma'am.
मोहम्मद राहील असगर, मोहम्मद सरमद,
Present, ma'am.
मोहम्मद सुमन ज़िया,
Present, ma'am.
मोहम्मद उस्मान, नायाब अरूज,
Present, ma'am.
नायाब वसीम,
Present, ma'am.
नॉर्मन,
Present, ma'am.
मेहताब हुसैन।
Excuse me, ma'am.
जी
Present,
बेटे,
ma'am.
Excuse me, ma'am.
जी बच्चे। Who is this बेटा?
Ma'am, sorry for intervening. This is Hamza Asad. Actually, माइक नहीं काम कर रहा था तो मेरी अटेंडेंस काइंडली मार्क कर दीजिएगा.
ओके, ठीक हो गया बेटा। ओके, रायब मेहताब इज प्रेजेंट। मोहम्मद
Present.
साद अनवर,
Yes, ma'am.
रेशा साजिद, रिमशा शाहिद,
Rimsha Saj is present, ma'am.
Rimsha Shahid present, ma'am.
सना रिफत,
Present, ma'am.
सीमाब कंवल,
Present, ma'am.
शहरियार शौकत, शहरियार शौकत,
वो कह रहे दोबारा ट्राई।
सुहेब असलम, सुहेब असलम, फैसल अब्बास,
Present, ma'am.
उमैमा,
Present.
उसामा बिन तस्नीम, उसामा बिन तस्नीम, he is absent.
SP 局长跟 PAC 主席是一样的，没问题。原则上 PAC 主席跟行政级别上他俩是同意。
Excuse me, ma'am.
मैम मेरा नाम नहीं लिया आपने रमीज
Excuse me, ma'am. मेरी attendance भी mark नहीं हुई. फवाद ज़ेब खान.
मैम मेरी मार्क भी नहीं हुई रमीज नहीं
अभी रहती है, अटेंडेंस रहती है।
एक मिनट मैम का नहीं है। मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही। ना माइक मैम आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही मैम। मैम मैम को डिस्कनेक्ट हो गई। मैं मैम से बात करता हूँ। मैम का जो है मैम क्लास से आउट हो गई। मैम से पूछता हूँ मैं।
जी क्लास उसामा मुर्तजा इज प्रेजेंट।
यस मैम। मैम उसको मैम बीमार हुआ है मैम, वो क्लास में था अभी, जस्ट अभी उससे लीव हुई है मैम, समा मुर्तजा से। मैम वो समा मुर्तजा और शरियार शौकत मैम, ये दोनों क्लास में थे अभी, मैम उनका कनेक्शन इशू आ रहा है इस टाइम।
मैम मेरा नाम भी आपने ले लिया, रमीज नाइम।
मैम मैं ऑफलाइन हो गया था 2 मिनट के लिए, मेरी भी अटेंडेंस फवाद जेफान।
मैम की आवाज नहीं आ मैम, डिस्टॉर्शन आ रही है आपके माइक से और आपकी आवाज नहीं आ रही मैम।
ओके क्लास कैन यू हियर मी नाउ?
यस मैम।
ओके उसामा मुर्तजा। बेटा उसामा मुर्तजा प्रेजेंट।
मैम उसामा मुर्तजा मैम क्लास में था मैम, उसको डेंगू हुआ तो मैम उसकी तबीयत बहुत खराब हो गई, तो उसको मुझे मैसेज आया है कि काइंडली मैम को इन्फॉर्म कर दे, मैं उससे डिस्कनेक्ट कर दी मैम।
ओके वसीम असद।
यस मैम।
जूबिया।
Present, ma'am.
अनम।
Yes, ma'am.
अनम अवैस अली।
प्रेजेंट मैम।
अब्दुल राफे। अब्दुल राफे। जोंग जी 134।
Present, ma'am.
सुबिन।
Yes, ma'am.
सुरैया तारिक।
Present, ma'am.
साद
Suraya
इमरान।
present.
रमीज नईम।
प्रेजेंट मैम।
मोहम्मद हारिस।
प्रेजेंट मैम।
ओके बेटे मैं भी आप लोगों को सिर्फ एब्सेंट स्टूडेंट के नाम बता रही हूँ। राहील अस्कर इज एब्सेंट। उस्मान मलिक इज एब्सेंट। सुहेब असलम is absent and Usama bin Tasneem and Abdul Rafe they are absent.
मैम फवाद इज मार्क प्रेजेंट।
जी बेटे।
मैम शुएब असलम तो मैम मीटिंग में है मैम, एक मैम जस्ट वेट अ सेकंड मैम।
मैम ये मेरी अटेंडेंस में एक फर्स्ट और सेकंड क्लास की अटेंडेंस ना एब्सेंट मार्क हुई ना प्रेजेंट मार्क हुई है, वो शो ही नहीं हो रही बिल्कुल।
बेटा बिकॉज यू वर नॉट रजिस्टर्ड सुहेब को मैंने बेटा प्रेजेंट कर दिया, आप रजिस्टर्ड नहीं थे इन क्लासेस में।
अच्छा ठीक है मैम, वो फिर नेक्स्ट क्लास में।
मैम
ओके सुहेब।
मैम क्लास ग्रुप में राहील असगर का मैसेज है मैम, काइंडली अभिषेक सीन कर सकते हैं मैम, वो मीटिंग में भी है और मैम उसकी पता नहीं आवाज नहीं आई तो उसे मैम क्लास ग्रुप में मैसेज किया हुआ है, फंडामेंटल्स वाले मैम व्हाट्सएप ग्रुप पे, अभिषेक वहाँ चेक कर सकते हैं।
ठीक
राहील
है बेटा,
असगर।
ठीक है मैंने अपडेट कर दिया। सो वी हैव उस्मान मलिक, उसामा बिन तस्नीम एंड राफे एब्सेंट।
ओके मैम।
ठीक है बेटा, दिस इज ऑल फॉर टुडे। we'll begin with the process groups in the next class, and let's just pray that we meet in campus so that we can actually complete the activities that are required. अच्छा बेटा एक चीज बताइए, हमने आपकी फर्स्ट क्लास की भी अटेंडेंस नहीं मार्क हुई ना?
मैम फर्स्ट क्लास की अटेंडेंस मैम आपको मैंने रिटर्न पेज पे दी थी मैम, आपके पास होगी
ठीक हो,
वो।
मेरे पास होगी, ठीक है मैं उधर से मैं आपकी अटेंडेंस मार्क कर लेती।
ओके मैम, मैम तो शायद मेरे पास मैम वो पड़ी होगी, मैं आपसे शेयर कर दूंगा।
या अदरवाइज उस हाउस की एक पिक्चर शेयर कर दीजिएगा।
ओके मैम।
चलो ओके बेटा, सी यू नेक्स्ट वीक। और सीआर बेटा आपने मुझे बताना है सैटरडे और फ्राइडे, व्हाटएवर इज कन्वीनियंट फॉर यू ऑल, ठीक है?
ओके मैम। मैम पर मैम ज़्यादातर क्लास का मैम ये कंसर्न है कि मैम फ्राइडे को मैम लाइक वो जॉब पे होते हैं, तो अगर सैटरडे हो जाए तो बहुत बेस्ट हो जाएगा। मैम सैटरडे को मैम सजिल की क्लास भी है, तो मैम चले मैम वो एक ही दिन में हम लोग आराम से क्लास ले सकते हैं।
ठीक है, फिर मेरी क्लास आपने 9 to 12 अरेंज करवानी है।
ओके मैम। मैं मैम सजिल से बात करता हूँ।
हाँ आप, क्योंकि सजल इज द कोऑर्डिनेटर सो शी विल बी डीलिंग विद इट। मेरी फिर आप करा दें, बिकॉज ताकि हमारा जो एक मेकअप सेशन चल रहा है ना, हम उसको एज सुन एज हम उसको कंप्लीट कर लें।
ओके मैम, इंशाल्लाह ताला।
ठीक हो गया, चले। सी यू ऑल नेक्स्ट वीक इंशाल्लाह।
ओके
हैव
मैम,
अ गुड।
थैंक यू।
ओके बेटा, अल्लाह हाफिज।
हाफिज।